Have you ever been laughed at? Not because you were trying to be funny, but because of who you were. Have you ever felt the sting of mockery, the kind that makes you want to crawl into a shadow and disappear? If you've been there, you know how deep it cuts. And if you haven't, let me take you into the life of one boy who carried that wound every single day, until the very thing people laughed at became the reason the world listened to him. His name was Daniel. He grew up in a small American town, tucked between rolling fields and a main street where everyone seemed to know everyone else's business. Daniel was not the boy who ran fastest at recess, nor was he the one who spoke up loudly in class. In fact, his voice was what made him different. It cracked, it trembled, and sometimes it stuttered in a way that drew attention, the wrong kind of attention. Children can be cruel without even realizing it. Every time Daniel stood to answer a question, there would be muffled giggles. Every time he tried to introduce himself, someone would mock the way his words broke apart. And though the teachers tried to hush the room, they couldn't hush the shame inside of him. He began to believe the whispers. He began to think, maybe I'm just the boy people laugh at. Maybe I was never meant to be taken seriously. But here's the thing about life. Sometimes the people who are laughed at are the very ones who carry the wisdom the world desperately needs. Daniel's parents loved him deeply. His mother, gentle but firm, would kneel by his bed at night and remind him, "Your voice is a gift, Daniel. Maybe it doesn't sound like everyone else's, but one day you'll understand why it was given to you." He wanted to believe her, but how could he? When every day at school felt like a stage he had never asked to step onto, with an audience eager to mock his every line. Still, Daniel pressed forward. He read books in silence, where no one could laugh at the way he stumbled. He scribbled thoughts in notebooks, long paragraphs of dreams and questions, because on paper no one could interrupt him. He learned to listen, to really listen, to people's stories, their pain, their hidden battles. While other kids were busy laughing, Daniel was quietly absorbing the world. Years passed. Daniel grew older, but the sting of ridicule never fully left. In high school, he avoided debates, skipped presentations, and did everything he could to stay in the background, until one day, life pushed him forward. It was sophomore year. In a crowded gymnasium, the school was hosting an event where students could share their experiences of bullying. One by one, people walked to the microphone. Some spoke about being left out, others about harsh words online. Daniel sat quietly, clutching his notebook. And then a teacher whispered in his ear, "Daniel, would you like to share?" His heart stopped. His first instinct was to shake his head. No, not me, not my voice. The microphone terrified him. He imagined the laughter, the giggles, the rolling eyes. But then something deeper stirred, a whisper inside that said, "You've carried these words long enough. Let them out." So he stood, slowly, trembling, with the weight of every past humiliation pressing against him. He reached the microphone, and for a moment the gym was silent. Everyone expected the boy with the broken voice. And yes, his voice cracked. Yes, his words trembled. But then something happened. As he spoke about the loneliness of being laughed at, about the nights he went to bed wishing he could change who he was, about the pain of silence, something in the room shifted. The laughter never came. Instead, people leaned in. They listened, because while his voice was imperfect, his truth was undeniable. His vulnerability cut through every mask in the room. And by the time he finished, tears lined the faces of classmates who had once mocked him. That was the turning point. For the first time, Daniel realized, my voice may not sound like everyone else's, but it carries something they cannot ignore. From that day forward, Daniel stopped running from the thing that made him different. He joined the debate team, not to win trophies, But to prove to himself that his words mattered, he started speaking at small community events, then at larger gatherings. His reputation changed, from the boy everyone laughed at to the young man whose voice made people stop and think. Years later, Daniel stood on a stage much bigger than that school gymnasium, a hall filled with thousands of people, all waiting to hear him. His heart raced, just like it had that first time. He still stuttered, his words still trembled. But now people didn't hear weakness, they heard strength, they heard honesty. They heard the echo of a boy who once thought his voice was a curse, standing as proof that sometimes the very thing the world mocks is the seed of your greatest gift. And here's the lesson. Life will always have people who laugh. There will always be voices trying to define you by your flaws. But the truth, your weakness is not your ending. It is the beginning of the story that only you can tell. So if you've ever been laughed at, if you've ever been underestimated, remember Daniel. Remember the boy who became the voice of wisdom. Not because he spoke perfectly, but because he spoke truthfully. And maybe, just maybe, your voice, your story, your gift, your flaw could be the very thing the world is waiting to hear. So don't hide, don't shrink, don't let the laughter decide your worth. Because one day the same people who doubted you may sit in silence, listening to the wisdom that only you could bring.